Hello everybody, today we're looking at the kinked demand curve. This is for the oligopoly market structure, right? The kinked demand curve illustrates that firms do not need to change their price. And the other thing that it illustrates is how firms are interdependent, right? They make decisions based on the actions of other firms, okay? They do not make decisions on their own, they copy, all right? Copy decisions or the actions of other firms. Because remember, in an oligopoly, it's few firms which have a large market share. All right. So firms basically are fighting for market share. That's why there's a lot of interdependence. Okay. So we're going to see what happens if a firm tries to increase its price or if it tries to lower its price. All right. So we have our our price here at 50 kwacha. All right. All firms are charging this price. Right. Then let's say one firm tries to raise the price to 53 kwacha. Right. So with this increase in price, all right, this increase in price is going to be a large decrease in the quantity. All right. On our x-axis, this represents quantity. Right. On our y-axis, this is price. All right. So a small price increment, right, will lead to a large drop in the quantity. All right. So as we can see above our price, 50 kwacha, demand is elastic. All right. Other firms are not going to follow this firm that raises the price. All right. The firm will just raise the price. It will be alone. Right. The demand will drop. It's going to lose its market share. All right. And let's see what happens also to the total revenue. Okay. So at first, if the firm is charging 50 kwacha, okay, total revenue is price times quantity. All right. So at first, we were charging 50 kwacha, right? The quantity is 100, right? So the revenue, not 1,100. All right. The revenue is 5,000 kwacha. Okay. Revenue is 5,000 kwacha. Perfect example of an oligopoly market structure is the telecom market, the telecom industry. All right. Even the energy industry, right? You have few firms that are dominating, right, the large portion of the market. All right. Because firms here, that's what they want, the portion of the market. So if one firm increases its price, okay, it becomes 53 kwacha. All right. We say 53 times 30, let's see, the revenue is obviously going to drop, all right, because here demand is elastic, all right. So 53 times 30, we get 1,590, right? The total revenue of that firm is going to significantly drop, right? That's why other firms are not going to follow suit, okay? If one firm increases the price, other firms won't follow suit. So what we can say is when there's a price increase, right? Whenever there is a price increase, all right, demand is elastic, all right? Demand is elastic. So what happens when demand is elastic is that a small increment in price will lead to a huge change in the quantity. All right, because remember, what we mean by elastic is just by it's more demand is very responsive to any changes to price. All right, when we say elastic, right, we're talking about how demand responds to price. Okay, so when demand is elastic, all right, a small increase in price, a very small increase in price is going to lead to a great reduction in demand, right? Of a huge reduction, very huge, right? And also, what happens is total revenue also falls, all right? Total revenue also falls, all right? And the firm that has increased the price loses market share, all right? Loses market share, right? So that's why firms are reluctant to increase the price, because when they increase the price, right, demand will be elastic, meaning demand is going to be very responsive to any changes, small changes in price. And if you remember, price and demand, all right, price and demand, there's an inverse relationship, right? Whenever price increases, demand goes down. Whenever price reduces, demand goes up, all right? So if demand is elastic, right, do not increase prices. This will be the effect. Okay. Now let's see what happens if a firm reduces the price. Okay, the firm reduces the price to 30 kwacha from 50. All right. What is going to happen here is this firm, by reducing the price, right, they're going to attract more customers. So what's going to happen is other firms are going to follow suit. All right. Other firms are going to copy this reduction. All right. So the consequence of other firms copying this reduction is that demand will be inelastic, meaning a great drop in price. All right. We have a very huge drop in price from 50 to 30. That's by 20. Right. A great drop in price. Right. It will lead to a small increment in the quantity. Okay. To lead in a small increment in the quantity. This is when demand is inelastic. All right. This is when demand. So because other firms have followed suit, all right, demand will become elastic. As you can see, we just have an increment of quantity of 10, all right, from 100 to 110. Quantity has just increased by 10, all right, because other firms have followed suit, all right. So it doesn't mean that you have a huge market share for a long time. No. All right. The moment you reduce the price, other firms are going to follow, and the demand is going to become inelastic. All right. So one thing I forgot to mention about this graph is that we have got two demand curves. All right. The first, above our price level, it's elastic, and below our price level, it is inelastic. All right. So this is all due to interdependence of firms. So once this firm reduces the price, let's see what happens to the total revenue. Right, for the total revenue, 30 times 110, you get 3,300. All right, so the total revenue is going to drop. All right, the total revenue is going to drop. All right, so it wouldn't be a good idea to reduce price because other firms are going to follow suit, right? Other firms are going to follow suit and copy you, right? And what will happen is eventually your total revenue is going to reduce because as other firms have copied you, demand becomes inelastic. So even though you reduce price by a high amount, right, your quantity will just increase by a small amount, all right? Okay, so now the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to also look at the marginal revenue curve. Okay, the marginal revenue curve. So let me just make some space here. All right, so as I said, we have two demand curves here. We've got the first one, right, D1 here, which is elastic. All right, remember, marginal revenue falls twice as steep as average revenue. All right, remember, demand equals average revenue, which equals price. All right, so you see we've got two demand curves here, two average revenue curves here, but our price still stays the same because we are not going to change the price. So it will still stay the same, right? So as average revenue is sloping down, marginal revenue will slope twice as steep as the average revenue, right here. So we'll call this marginal revenue 1, right? Now what happens is because we have a switch from elastic demand to inelastic demand, so our marginal revenue curve, all right, is going to be discontinued, all right? It is going to end here, right? And then it's going to come out from here. So let me just make space here. All right, so let me choose which color to use. All right, red, right? So our first marginal revenue curve will end here. This is where the switch happens from elastic to inelastic. So what happens is our second marginal revenue curve is going to slope twice as steep as this average revenue curve here, right? So when it comes out here, it is going to slope twice as steep as this inelastic average revenue curve or inelastic demand curve, right? So we have marginal revenue 2, all right? So because of the kink, all right, this kinked demand curve, when we have a switch from elastic to inelastic, right, what happens is we have our first marginal revenue curve, all right, then it ends here, right? Then our second marginal revenue curve is going to slope as twice as steep as the second demand curve, all right? Yes. So another point that I want to illustrate is why frames also don't need to change the price at, at 50 kwacha, all right? If we look at this vertical gap here, right, let me color it purple, all right? This vertical gap here, which we have here, right? Let's say, for example, if costs of supply, all right, cost of supply increase, right? Let's just assume that this firm is wants to be a profit maximizer, all right? So if we add in our marginal cost curve, let me just make space here, all right? We're adding a marginal cost curve, all right, here, all right? Remember, put here MC1, right? Firms, profit maximizing firms produce at the point where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, all right? So let's say costs of supply increase, we have an increase in supply, all right? Firms still do not need to change their price, right? They will still charge the same price, all right, which is 50 kwacha, and still produce and still have the same demand, which is 100, all right? So even though our costs increase in this vertical gap, assuming that a firm is a profit maximizer, and the cost of supply increase or decrease, we're not going to change our price, all right? We'll still be charging the same price, and the cost of supply increase, all right? As we can see here. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.